Hello and welcome to another bite-sized episode of the Do The Work podcast. I know your time is precious, so we keep these short and sharp so you can get the information that you need and go away and implement it into your lifestyle with your health and fitness. Just before we get into the episode, all I would say is if you like this content, if you could please share it with a friend, like it and subscribe so that we can get our message out to change more people's lives. Enjoy the episode. In a recent episode, we talked about a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And one of the key things that we talked about is making our new habits small so that we can achieve it without feeling like a failure. Now, today I want to talk about one of the next most important things to think about when we are trying to set a new habit or change an old one. And that's that we need to be specific. And the reason this is important is because when most people start on their health and fitness or the weight loss journey, or it could be applicable to pretty much anything, they get quite vague about what their targets are and maybe even don't set them. So then they don't know if they're either being successful and whether they're going to fail. And often I think the reason that people do that is because if they set the parameters for success, they also set the parameters for failure, and people are scared of that. But again, often it means that we actually don't know if we're getting any better. So for me, it's really important to refer back to the previous episode that we make it small, something that's manageable to be successful at when we begin, but also that we are super specific so that we know if we are actually making progress towards the said goal. So I want to give you some examples here that would give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And when we do this, we're going to use what we call range targets. And one easy example to share with you for this is when we talk about steps. So most people, they want to go for like the magic 10,000 steps when they want to commit to making some changes, which is a great target to hit, and for most people would create a lot of changes physiologically and psychologically. But what this does is it immediately sets the parameter for success and failure at a very fine margin. So if you was to achieve 9,999 steps, technically that would mean you failed, and only one step more would mean that you were successful. So instead of that, we can plan for what might turn out to be a bad or a busy day or something that doesn't go to plan by setting what we call a range target. Therefore, we have like a minimum non-negotiable that we want to work to. So instead of saying we're going to do 10,000 steps per day, what we could do is we could set that at 70,000 for the week. Therefore, we can have a day that's slightly higher and slightly lower, and then equal that over the period of the week. And what we can also do is even break that down. If you want to set a daily target, we could set that daily target to achieve between 8,000 and 12,000 per day. And that way there we allow ourselves to be more successful in 10,000, but we also allow ourselves to feel successful when we hit that lower number, which is 8,000. And we might have in mind when we do that the optimal number is 10,000 and the weekly target is still 70, but it allows us to still feel successful when we hit 8,000, and we've still adhered to this kind of rule, if you will, of being specific in our targets. And if we do that, we still feel successful, so we're more likely then to be able to stick with it and not feel like we're off the wagon when something goes wrong and we're a little bit busy and maybe we only manage 8,000 steps. And we can translate this into different areas as well. So when we look at our training, so we could consider that we want to train 3 times per week. But if we were working with being specific and setting a range target so that we could be successful even in a busy week, we might set ourselves a target of training between 2 and 4 days per week. Again, 3 days is the optimal number that we're aiming for, and that might average out over the month or the year at that. However, in a really difficult week, we might then still see 2 as being successful, and then the following week we could maybe strive to achieve 4 to kind of make the difference up. But this way it just gives us an opportunity to again reaffirm this, to feel successful even in a busy week and have a little bit of rope to play with, as I say, when time is a little bit limited. We can do this with our calories as well, and we can use range targets quite effectively with calories by taking into account things like the weekend. If you like to indulge a little bit more at the weekend, then we can go for a higher calorie target at those days and a slightly lower calorie target during the week, and that would be having that range over the course of the week. Or we can simply have a range target per day, which again, if your sort of target was, let's say, 1,600 calories, you could have a range between 1,400 and 1,800, with 1,600 being optimal, however, still being successful on a day where you need to opt for something that's a little bit more convenient, higher in calories, at 1,800, and you might then fall slightly lower on the other days. So for me, going back to what we were talking about in terms of being specific, it's really important to identify what the goal is and what we're aiming at, but it's equally important to give ourselves a little bit of a range, a little bit of a parameter in which we can still be successful, even on a day where that proves that little bit more difficult. So again, to tie these two things together, we want to make initially that target small enough so that we can be successful, specific enough so that we know that we've achieved it, and give ourselves a little bit of a range so that we can feel successful even on a difficult day. Thanks for tuning in for today's episode. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, you've got the power to share this message as well. So if you have a friend who might find this content useful, please share it with them, and we'll see you on the next episode.